Chris Graham with Trailblazer RV, here to take you through a new RV orientation on this 2020 KZ Connect 291 BHK. Starting right here at the front of the trailer, where you got your power jack, propane, and battery system. For the power jack, there's a on-off switch on the front. That's not to turn the jack itself on and off, it's to turn the hitch light on and off, and then simple up and down operation. You can manually crank this power jack using the crank handle that's stored in the front storage compartment by removing the cap on the top of the jack, should you ever need to. Behind that is your propane system. You can access the propane valves by opening the cover on the top of the tank cover, or just lifting up to remove the whole cover itself. On this one, you've got two 20-pound propane bottles. Both of these are full right now, with an automatic switchover regulator. You can see the arrow pointed to this bottle. That makes this the supply bottle and this the reserve bottle. As long as you have both valves open, which we recommend, the regulator will deplete the supply bottle first and then automatically start to pull from the reserve bottle. Once that happens, this sight glass on the front of the regulator will turn from clear to red, indicating that the supply bottle is empty. At that point, you can switch the regulator over to the second bottle, and you can remove the first bottle to go and refill it without ever shutting down your propane system. Behind the propane bottles is your battery. This is our standard 12-volt deep cycle RV battery. It's a flooded wet cell battery, so it does require a little bit of maintenance. We recommend a couple of times a year removing these two caps on the top of the battery and checking the fluid levels in the cells underneath. If the fluid is a little bit low, and especially if you can see metal plates sticking through the liquid, you'll want to top it up with some distilled water up to the fill line and put a good charge on the battery. Only two leads go into this battery, red lead to positive and black to negative. And you've got a battery disconnect switch behind the battery as well. So green is connected, red is disconnected. If you're putting the RV into storage for a few days or weeks at a time, you can disconnect that battery so that there's no power draw from the RV. We recommend with this battery removing it for winter storage and storing it indoors someplace that it's not going to freeze. If possible, over the off season, putting a good charge on the battery as well, once or twice. Here in your front pass-through storage compartment is where you'll find your power cord. This is a 50 amp power cord, and some sites that you camp at will have 50 amp. For those that don't, we also supply the 30 amp dog bone adapter and the 15 amp park adapter. So you should be able to plug into 50, 30, or 15 amp power service. Right behind the storage compartment is where you'll find some of your freshwater system. You can fill your freshwater tank with a garden hose, or what we recommend is one of those white drinking water specific hoses, so you don't get that plasticky garden hose taste in your water. You can fill the tank from right here, or if you're camped at a site that has water hookups, you can hook directly up to water here at the city water connection. You can use that same white drinking water hose for that. And we recommend using a water pressure regulator if you're hooking into city water. That will ensure that you don't over-pressurize the water lines in the RV. If you draw a line straight down from that, you'll find your freshwater tank drain. So by turning this valve, you can drain all of the water from the freshwater tank. If you're putting the RV into storage for a few weeks, you may want to drain that water out, and certainly you'll need to drain it out as part of the winterization process when you put the RV away for the season. In behind this black panel right here, you'll have to remove two screws to open up this black panel. That's where you'll find your water pump. And on the water pump is a siphon kit. So you can turn a valve to switch the suction line from the freshwater tank to a siphon line, which you can put into a jug of antifreeze. Then you can turn on your water pump and pump antifreeze directly from the jug through the water lines in the RV. Here at your running gear, your tires are inflated to 65 psi, and that's stamped right on the side wall of the tire if you forget. We do recommend running the tires right at 65 psi. We've torqued your lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds. We recommend with towable RVs periodically retorquing your lug nuts, as well as repacking your wheel bearings. We've historically recommended a wheel bearing repack every year. This trailer has easy lube axles, so if you remove the center cap here, you can access a grease zerk. You can use a grease gun to grease your inner and outer wheel bearings. Giving those bearings a little bit of fresh grease every year doesn't eliminate the need to repack the wheel bearings, but instead of recommending it every year, as long as you give the bearings some fresh grease once in a while, you can probably get away with repacking your wheel bearings every 3 to 5 years, depending on how much you travel with the RV. Right behind your running gear is where you'll find your sewer dumping. So you have 2 sewer connections on this trailer and 3 valves. The forward sewer connection is for your galley tank or your kitchen gray tank, and even though it's a large valve on that pipe, that is to dump gray water. The rear sewer connection has 2 valves, a larger black valve and a smaller gray valve, and this is to dump your sewage as well as your gray water, your sink and shower water. When dumping this one, always dump the larger black valve first, and once that has finished draining, you can close that valve and then pull the gray valve to dump the gray water and kind of flush the black contents through the hose. That way when you disconnect the hose, there won't be anything left inside it. The sewer hose is stored inside the rear bumper. We supply a 20-foot medium heavy-duty sewer hose, and it's in there right now. We've also got a little storage area right here, in addition to your pass-through front storage compartment. So for things like gloves and a water hose and stuff like that you might use for that sewer dumping, that's a good spot for it. Kind of keeps it separate from the rest of the storage up at the front. Right here is where that 50 amp power cord will connect, and we found that in the front storage compartment. This trailer has a folding cargo tray on the back. The cargo tray is rated for 250 pounds, and that includes the weight of the spare tire. So about 200 pounds left after the weight of the tire and rim. Spare tire mounted on the back. I like to point out that the trailer doesn't come with a jack or a wheel wrench. Your tow vehicle should have one that's more than capable of lifting the trailer, but it's a good idea to check the wheel wrench and make sure that it fits the trailer lug nuts, because if it doesn't, you might want to carry a separate wheel wrench just in case you do ever need to change a tire on the side of the road. Here on the camping side of the trailer, you've got your outside shower here, so you've got hot and cold water access here, and above that is another hose connection. Don't confuse this one with the one on the front. Where that one is a freshwater hookup, this is a sewer tank flush system. So when you're dumping your holding tanks, when you've got that larger black valve open, you can hook your garden hose up to here and it'll spray out the inside lining of that tank. So it'll keep the walls of the tank clean, and it'll rinse off the monitor probes to keep your monitor panel reading accurately. Right here is your outside kitchen. the fridge in the outside kitchen is 110 volt power only. You need to be plugged into power for that to work. And you have a gas cooktop here. So this is the Capital Grill. You can actually cook your food right on the grill rather than the conventional two-burner stove top that many trailers have. This is not permanently connected into the propane system for the RV. So you will have to connect that every time you use it. And to do that, you'll use the Quick Connect propane connection. It connects right here on the grill and right behind the tires to the trailer. Once you've connected the Quick Connect line to the barbecue, this valve will need to open in order for any propane to flow. And there's a valve on the hose itself as well as on the trailer. You have to have both valves open for the propane to flow. Right here you've got the vent for your fridge. You can remove this to access the back of the fridge for cleaning or repairs if you ever needed to, but it's mostly just a vent. That fridge needs some airflow for it to work properly. Another vent here for your furnace. This gets very hot when the furnace is running, so make sure if there's young kids around the RV, they know not to touch that. And here at the front you've got a solar charging port. You can buy an optional folding Furrion solar panel that'll plug into there and charge directly to the battery. Inside the front storage compartment is where you'll find your two jack crank handles. The shorter one to manually crank the front power jack if you ever need to, and the larger one to crank your stabilizer jacks down. And with those stabilizer jacks, they're on all four corners of the trailer. Once you're parked in place at the RV park and relatively level, you can crank those down to be snug with the ground, but you don't want to actually lift the RV with those. They're not designed to absorb that much weight. They're just for stability. So just crank them down to be snug with the ground. And we didn't find the hot water tank on this one. I think it may be just around the back. So hot water tank here behind the rear cargo tray. You can remove the outer panel to access the back of the tank. This is a gas electric hot water tank, so you can run this electrically if you're plugged into power at the campsite. To do that, you'll need to have this black rocker switch turned to the on position in the bottom left-hand corner of the tank. There's also two black reset buttons here. If the tank ever overheats, most commonly because it was started up with no water in it, you'll have to reset both of those reset buttons before you can start the tank again. This is also where you'll drain the water out of the tank for the winterizing process. You'll do that by pulling the plug out of the bottom of the tank. It's a 1 1/16 inch socket, and before you pull that out, make sure to bleed the pressure off the tank using the pressure relief valve. That way it won't spray. On the end of this plug is a rod about this long. It's called an anode rod. And the purpose of the anode rod is to corrode over time to preserve the inside lining of the tank. So that rod can get quite pitted and corroded looking. It's perfectly normal. It's just doing its job. But it does need to be replaced depending on the quality of the water, typically every two or 3 or 4 years. We'll extend the awning, and the awning controls from just inside the entry door. When we open the entry door, we're met with the step. To release the step, just pull the handle and fold it down. These legs are adjustable in height by pulling these pins and adjusting the legs. If you're in a very unlevel campground, you may find you need to adjust the legs. right inside the door is where the switch for our awning is. So if we just press and hold awning extend, the awning moves out 8 feet, and you don't have to bring it the full 8 feet out. If there's a tree or another RV in the way, you can stop it at any time. And once it's extended, this one is a height adjustable power awning. Both sides are adjustable, but typically you would only lower one side so that you can control where the rainwater runs off. And you do that just by pulling down on this lower arm. You may, in fact, drop the other side further away from the door so that you can run all of the water away from your entry door. Before you retract the awning, we recommend putting both arms back up to full height. That'll ensure that the canvas rolls up straight on the roller tube. Follow me inside and we'll go through a few things in the trailer. So right here next to the entry door is the rest of your monitor panel and control panel. So this is where we found that awning switch. It's also where you'll find your slide switch. So extend your slide out, just press and hold the out button. And this is a flush floor slide, so it drives from the bottom. It extends 3 feet. And when it reaches its full extension, it's kind of going to cinch up at the bottom to make a flush transition with the floor. Once you hear the ratcheting sound, you know the slide is all the way up. Just like that. Just like that. Once you hear that ratcheting sound, you can take your hand off the button. You've also got your monitor panel here, so you can monitor the level of your freshwater tank, which still has about 1/3 of a tank in it left over from our tests. Your battery is good right now. L for low, F for fair, G for good. If it was currently charging, it would show C for charging. And then your black and gray holding tanks. This trailer only has one black tank, so the black 2 button doesn't do anything, but you do have 2 gray tanks, so gray 1 and gray 2, both empty. This is also where you'll control or turn on and off your hot water heater. If you're plugged into electricity and want to run the hot water electrically, turn this switch on. You also need to have that second black rocker switch on the tank itself turned on. And the switch right above that is for your propane. So to light the hot water tank on propane, turn the switch on. Red fault light comes on, showing that that burner is not currently running. And in just a second, we'll hear the DSI spark and that tank fire up. And in the video, you probably didn't hear the DSI spark over the sound of the garbage truck, but that tank is running on propane now. If that fault light didn't go out, or if it went out only briefly and came back on, that's when you might need to go out and press those 2 black reset buttons on the outside of that tank. This is also where you'll activate your water pump if you're not hooked up to city water and camping using your freshwater reserves from the tank. And switch here for your LED awning light as well. So just beneath the awning canvas is that LED awning light that runs the entire length of the awning. There's also a couple of more light switches here for your interior accent lighting and your main interior lighting panel. Yeah, pretty much covers it there. So here in the kitchen, you've got a 3-burner gas stovetop. All 3 of these burners can be lit using the sparker here. Once you've got a flame burning there at the burner, hold this down for a few seconds more just to for the flame sensor to heat up, and then you can can turn it to temperature, high or low. Always recommend the first thing you do when you put a new propane tank on the RV is come to the stovetop and light all 3 burners once you've reconnected that propane system. If you do have any air in the propane lines, that will bleed all of the air off of the propane lines. Your fridge is an automatic gas electric nor cold fridge. So to turn it on, just press the on button, and we recommend always leaving it in A for automatic. In automatic mode, it will run on electricity if it has electricity available, but if it loses power, it'll sense that and automatically start the propane. You can override the automatic mode to only run on electricity or only run on propane, and you might find that the fridge cools a little bit faster on propane than it does on electricity. Having said that, it takes several hours to cool down an RV fridge, so we do recommend getting it cooling the day before you load it up so that you know it's cooled to temperature by the time you load your food into it. For now, I'll leave this on automatic setting. There's a temperature adjustment on this fridge, 1 being the warmest, 5 being the coldest. I usually set it on 3 or 4, but you may find you need to adjust that depending on the ambient conditions. To turn off the fridge, press and hold the on button for 3 seconds. Beneath the fridge is the power converter. So this is the power center for the entire RV. You've got breakers for all of your 110 volt applications and fuses for all of your 12 volt applications. You've got all 15 amp fuses here, so not a bad idea to have just some spare 15 amp fuses. It's not uncommon in an RV to blow a fuse. This converter can also sometimes make a little bit of a humming or a buzzing sound. That's perfectly normal. When it's operating under load, it has a cooling fan in it, similar to what a computer would have. The Furrion sound bar is your interior and exterior sound system. So to turn it on, just press the on button. The LED display is right behind the speaker. And you have 2 different speaker zones. Zone 1 for interior speakers and zone 2 for exterior speakers. Make sure if you're sitting in the trailer listening to music that you've got your zone 2 speakers turned off. That way everybody else in the campground isn't listening to your music as well. Shaggy in this case. Couple more things to point out in here. Down here in this corner, you've got a propane leak detector, and this one is actually propane and carbon monoxide both. So the propane detector will do 3 things. It'll alert you obviously to a propane leak, but if you had a propane leak in the RV, you would almost certainly smell the propane before the alarm goes off. It can also alert you to a carbon monoxide situation, in which case you definitely wouldn't smell anything. But the third thing that this will do is it'll also alert you to a low voltage situation with your RV battery. This is wired into the RV's electrical system, so if the RV battery gets very low, this will chirp like a smoke detector does when its battery is reaching the end of its life, just to alert you to the low voltage. You do have a smoke detector as well, and this is not wired into the RV's electrical system. It does have its own 9-volt battery, so you want to check that periodically and just use the test button to make sure that the smoke detector battery hasn't gone dead. Here in the bathroom, not a whole lot to talk about in here, but anytime you're using the sewer system for the RV, you want to make sure and use a good potent RV toilet chemical. The chemical comes in powder, liquid, or tablet form, and any of the 3 is fine. But make sure when you add chemical to the system, pour the chemical right into the toilet bowl, and then use the foot flush, push halfway down on the foot flush to fill the bowl with water, then the rest of the way down to dump the whole works into the tank. The chemical takes a little water to activate it, so make sure every time you add chemical to the system that you put some water down with it. And you'll want to add new chemical immediately after every time you dump your holding tanks. There's also a power outlet in here that's a GFI outlet with the test and reset buttons on it. Just like the ones in the bathroom in your home, but in an RV, this is wired in series with several of your other power outlets. So if you do trip your GFI, you'll lose power at all of your power outlets. If you're ever plugged into services and wondering why you have no power at your power outlets, come in here, press the reset button, and that'll reset the whole circuit. Your thermostat here on the wall controls both your heating and cooling systems. We're not plugged into power at the moment, so we won't get the air conditioner to kick on. But to use the air conditioner, just move the system setting over to cool, set the fan to automatic, and set the temperature on the thermostat. When it's in automatic, the air conditioning will cycle on and off per the thermostat. There's also high and low fan speeds for the air conditioner fan. For the furnace, there's only one fan speed, so this switch doesn't do anything. And if we turn the system over to heat and turn up the thermostat, we hear that furnace fan come on immediately, but just like the hot water tank, it's going to be a few seconds before the burner itself actually lights up. And we'll hear that as soon as that happens. There you go. If you heard that ticking sound, that was the furnace burner igniting. If we give it a few seconds, we would have warm air blowing from our floor vents. Once the system comes to temperature, or you turn it off, exactly the same thing happens, only in reverse. The burner has gone out immediately, but the fan is still going to continue to run for another 30 seconds to a minute just to go through its cycle before it shuts down. With this trailer, you'll remember the hot water tank was located right on the back wall. To access the bypass valves for that hot water tank, you can remove this panel underneath the bottom bunk. There's actually two ways to access those valves: by removing that panel or by removing the upper plywood base of the bunk bed. And on the back of that hot water tank, you'll find two valves that are bypass valves to bypass the hot water tank. If you close the valve at the bottom of the tank and the valve at the top of the tank, that will bypass the tank so that you can pump antifreeze through your cold water lines and your hot water lines without filling the hot water tank. Here in the master bedroom, only a couple of things to point out. You have an emergency exit window here, and I always recommend that you practice using this a little bit. It's a little bit of a tricky mechanism. It just pushes out and it can be latched open for ventilation. If you do need to use it for emergency exit, the window will hinge all the way up, and just use the red tab to pull the screen out. But in a panic situation, it's a little bit of a tricky mechanism. You might have a hard time with it, so I recommend practicing that a few times. And you've got a second TV backer location here in the bedroom as well. If you're going to install a TV here, make sure you hit the backing. The sticker's not always in exactly the right spot, and on this trailer, the backing in the wall will be metal. So the best way to find the TV backing is with a magnet. The magnet will stick where the backing is. Don't use any screws longer than 1 inch because the wall is only about 1.5 inches thick here. And I think for the most part that covers it. Hopefully you've learned something about the 2020 KZ Connect 291 BHK. If you have any questions, you can always get a hold of us here at Trailblazer, or you can visit our website, trailblazerrv.com. Thank you for watching.